Yeah. Okay. Welcome, folks. Welcome. John Bush here with the one, the only Mike Cobb. We're going to let folks cycle in. Really excited to have you guys joining us today. We got Brenda coming in, Chris, Crystal, Debbie, Jeffrey, Lori. What a great bunch. We're doing a Zoom webinar today. Of course, we're here in Las Vegas.
Yeah, Caesar's behind us. That's right.
It's about 115 degrees out there. I don't know, maybe 72 or so. 76, it seems. The AC's cranking. But we're going to be doing about an hour and a half or so talking about this really incredible alternative investment opportunity and this whole Plan B concept, which I'm excited to learn more about as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so folks are trickling in. Thanks so much for joining us here today. You guys should be able to ask questions, right? So the webinar today, we're not going to have a presentation or a slideshow. It's going to be more conversational.
Yep.
I'll be asking Mike some questions. We'll be just kicking it back and forth, but we want you guys to be really involved. So the way to be involved is to ask questions here in the Q&A. So you should have the ability to go to Q&A, and then you'll put your question in, and then we'll be able to go through those, check them off, make sure we're hitting all of them. And Diego, I don't know if it's possible to enable a chat for folks to chat amongst themselves. If not, no worries. Excellent. If we'd love for you to stay around till the end. If you got to come and go, we'll be sending a replay out. Mike's team will be sending a replay out here shortly. So thanks everybody for joining us. Let's go ahead and get right down to it. Okay, so of course, I'm John Bush, founder of Live Free Academy. We're here in Las Vegas enjoying some Freedom Fest.
Yes.
This is my first Freedom Fest.
It's phenomenal.
You're a Freedom Fest veteran.
Many years.
Speaker.
I was here at the first one.
Oh, really?
20 years ago.
Awesome.
Been, yeah, almost every one. You know, look, the voice of freedom is important. You guys, I mean, you, Rebecca, and your team, Ryan, I mean, what you're doing there in Texas to get the word of freedom out is powerfully important. And Mark Skousen here at Freedom Fest is likewise getting the word out, and glad you could join this year. It's great, man.
It's good.
Yeah.
We like it. Okay, good. So the company Live Free Academy, we help people create greater freedom, greater prosperity, greater community. We're into Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, but also alternative investments in general, whether it's land, gold, crypto, like I shared, investing in businesses. But really excited about this particular investment opportunity because it is something that's definitely outside of the box. And as we approach greater and greater systemic economic risks with the legacy systems, inflation, just like total corruption. In fact, it's kind of ridiculous now how bad things are getting. People are seeking alternatives. And not only are they seeking alternatives, but they're seeking alternatives that are presented by people and institutions that you can trust. And I'm going to give Mike a sec here to introduce himself, but I just want to share that we've grown to know each other pretty well over the years. He's sponsored the Land Summit, met my kiddos. Swell guy. He's the kind of guy that shows up to the event, that he's not only is he sponsoring, but he shows up to the event with a box of donuts for all the volunteers. So absolutely, I take note of stuff like that.
Because you get all the credit, you get all like the glory up on stage. It's all these people behind the scenes, right?
They're doing all the grunt work, the hard work.
Donuts, man. That's right.
So maybe just introduce yourself if folks aren't familiar with you and what you do.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. It is. It's great to be with you, and really what you and your team are doing is powerfully important. And so it really is tremendous to be a part of it with you. And that's really how I look at these relationships. It's us doing something together for the folks who are with us today, as you all are with us today. And, you know, I got my start, you know, now 32 years ago in Belize, started a little mortgage company to help folks find financing. Because if you were buying a property down in Belize and you were from the US, Texas, or wherever, like no bank in Texas is lending you money to buy a property in Belize. And no bank in Belize would lend you money as a foreigner, right? So there was this big hole in the marketplace. So that was my very first business. Me and a buddy, we started a little mortgage company that got it up and running, and then we turned it into a bank. So actually, our bank just celebrated 20 years as an international offshore bank in Belize.
That's impressive.
Last September. Yeah, it's great. But, you know, but the whole point of it is finding a need that's not being met and then figuring out how to serve it, right? Okay. And so we got into the development space. We started building homes and condos for folks that were looking for a North American standard product overseas, which again wasn't really common, and we knew we could deliver that to them. And then the next evolution was this one, which we're going to talk about today. Because what we found was that a lot of people that wanted to live overseas, they wanted to have a home or a condo overseas, and they were thinking about retiring there at some point, or in many cases, they actually were retiring. I mean, we're serving people in their 60s. They needed a residency, right? Because we have this false sense of like, I can just go wherever I want. It's true. You can get on, most Americans, Canadians, we get on an airplane, we fly to, Belize, and you walk up to the customs desk and they say, welcome to Belize, and they stamp your passport, right? So, but in order to actually spend real time there,
every time they stamp the passport, there's a little tick, a
30
time clock that
days,
goes
right?
on.
Yeah, 30 days. And so we got into the business of serving the need to help people get a residency as well.
Okay.
And so sort of our business kind of, went in kind of three different directions. And then in 1999, what's that, 24 years ago now, almost 25 years ago, we planted 100 acres of teak as a long-term investment, small group of investors, myself and some others, really as a generational wealth stewardship tool to be able to provide wealth into our kids, our grandkids, our great grandkids, as teak, and we'll talk more about that too. But that's really the introduction, right? So banking and finance, development for homes, condominiums, residences for people who want to live overseas or invest overseas, and then teak and the residency piece. And the residency piece, because of the freedom aspects, and I've been to your conference, we sponsored, we presented there, this idea of having freedom insurance, a way to absolutely ensure your freedom kind of almost no matter what happens in your home country. So there's sort of maybe the big broad topics we'll talk a little bit about today, but it's your show, man. We'll talk about whatever you want.
Well, I'd love, before we get into teak and the opportunities there, can you just give your assessment and analysis of some of the legacy investment opportunities? Because we know everybody, it's all by design, of course, to benefit Wall Street, the 401ks, the IRA, the retirement plans. People go to college and then they go into the corporate world, and this is just what is handed to them. And a lot of people don't know there's alternatives. What's your take on just the old fashioned, slow and steady? I mean, don't get me wrong, a lot of people benefit from this. A lot of people are retiring. A lot of people are doing well today. The stock market's doing well right now, but what's your analysis? What's your take? Are there some risks there? And how does this compare to some alternatives?
Sure. Look, I think that I would never bet against the US economy. It's the world's largest economy by far, right? I mean, they talk about China a little bit, but whatever, right? I mean, California is the seventh largest economy in the world. Right. I mean, so you've got this just incredible economic engine in the United States. And I don't think, sure. I mean, you can have recessions, you can have depressions, right? But I don't think it's doomsday, right? I think so. I actually believe that having, I would say, even a large percentage of your assets in traditional investments, stock market, bond, whatever, I think those make sense. But the thing that's really important is to understand that if you have all your eggs in one basket, no matter how good that basket is, and I think the US basket's pretty darn good, by comparison to other countries anyway, certainly.
We got the best basket, better than all the rest baskets.
Yeah, best basket. We do have the best basket, I think, for a lot of things.
That was my Trump impression.
Yeah, well, that was good. That was good. But I don't care how good that basket is. If all of your eggs are in one basket, that's foolish.
Sure.
That's foolish. And so the idea of having alternative investments outside the traditional investments, whether it's stocks, bonds, cash, precious metals, those are, I wouldn't call those alternatives. I think
very well established.
Yeah, but I think a lot of the, down the middle stock market people would think metals are alternatives. So we can throw them over in the alternative category. But I do believe that alternatives are important. And then to further diversify geographically and say, not all my eggs in the US basket. And there is a fallacy, John, that people say, well, I've got Toyota stock, Nestle stock, and BMW stock. You're right, Germany, Japan and Switzerland, but they're all on the New York Stock Exchange. Sure. So you don't really have geographic diversification, right? So I think that having some of the eggs in some other baskets is really wise and prudent. And I think the alternatives, as the mainstream folks would call it, makes a lot of sense because they're not correlated, right? You want something that's fairly uncorrelated to the US stock market. when possible, right?
Well, what are your thoughts? I mean, I'm with you. It's the most powerful economic engine, but wouldn't you say a lot of it is just kind of propped up by money printing and a lot of just kind of fake playing behind the scenes
Yes.
and
Well,
BlackRock and all that stuff?
100%, 100%. I agree with you. And so I think that, if we look at, I mean, you guys are into crypto and Bitcoin, and I believe in it. I own it, right? I have metals. I like metals as well. If you look at the US dollar compared to other fiat currencies, I think the US dollar is strong and it'll probably stay strong. Like, who's going to buy Russian rubles? I mean, like, I'm not putting any money in Russian rubles. Like, I trust the US government about, this much. I trust the Russians about, less than zero, right? Right. I don't, I mean, no offense to the Russians, but, we have, I mean, there's a lot of great books about high trust and low trust societies, right? The US is what is a high trust society, and it's pretty high trust society, right? So I think if you look at the US dollar compared to other currencies, fiat currencies, it's going to continue to do pretty well. But if you look at it compared to Bitcoin, gold, silver, right? No. I mean, those are real, to me, those are the real store of values. And so I think the US economy is going to continue to chunk along, but our buying power vis-a-vis real things, food's a commodity, right? It's a real thing, right? I mean, we're already seeing food prices shooting up, right? So as our costs of feeding ourselves continue to go up because the value of our paper dollars continues to go down, that's gonna rock our world, man. And I think in some pretty scary ways. It has the potential to rock our world in some pretty scary ways. Cool. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So keep the questions coming too. So Karen just dropped a question, and I kind of have an agenda in my mind where I want to bring the conversation. We're going to be talking about Teak more, and we're going to talk about Teak as a vehicle to obtain second residency. But we want you guys to be involved in this conversation. Again, we don't have a presentation. We're more free flowing, but Mike's got a wealth of knowledge. So Karen is asking if you could share anything about BRICS and their currency and their cooperation and their potential competitiveness with the US dollar, or even like the IMF and the special drawing rights and this
SDRs, baby, SDRs. People were laughing at me, 15, 20 years ago when I said, look, SDRs are already out there. And they're like, you're a conspiracy theorist, Cobb. I'm like,
explain what that is.
Special drawing rights. It's part of the UN, World Bank, and basically it's sort of a basket of currencies that the United Nations and the World Bank have said, okay, instead of having everything based on the US dollar, we're going to put this basket of currencies together, and we're going to call it a special drawing right. And it's how countries can kind of borrow at the World Bank and from each other without using the US dollar as the principal denominator of that transaction, right? Okay. Anyway, so people are like, oh, Cobb, you're a conspiracy. No, it's SDRs. I said, hold on a second. Go to United Airlines and look at the baggage policy, and you scroll way down, and when you get down to the part where it talks about compensation for lost baggage, it talks about it in SDRs. Really? Yes, this is 20 years ago. Wow. I'm like, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. It's United Airlines. I mean, right? Yeah. So to answer Karen's question about the BRICS, look, again, I think that the U.S. economy is powerfully strong. And we've got this incredible infrastructure. And I think that's something that sometimes people kind of forget. And I give the example. I always take a window seat on the airplane. I love a window seat because I look out the window a lot. Yes. And I can tell you, living in Nicaragua for 14 years, I lived there for 14 years, and the port of entry to the US for me was almost always Houston. And so if you were sitting on the left side of the airplane, from the time you hit the coastline in Texas to the time you landed at Bush International Airport, if you were just looking left out the window, looking west, there's more infrastructure in that 20 miles than there is in all of Central America. Sure. I mean, we're just talking about one city. We're just talking one part of one city, right? And so you've got this flywheel of momentum and so yes, it can, so anyway, coming back to Karen's question, I think that Brazil, Russia, India, and China, you know what? I would say, throw a little bit of money in the BRICS. Again, it's prudent, right? It's just prudent. Like having all my eggs in the US dollar? No way, right? I don't know how much I would put in BRICS. I probably wouldn't put very much in BRICS because I don't think any of those countries are particularly trustworthy compared to our country, which is maybe more trustworthy. We're printing money like drunken sailors, right? But I don't think, Russia, Brazil, India, and China. I mean, China's got a huge economic problem with all the money they printed into their housing, right? I mean, they've got these giant skyscrapers that are empty.
Oh, they have this big bank that everyone's thinking is about to be on the verge of collapse too.
Right?
What it's called.
But they do. And then they've got this population that's not replacing itself, right? So they've got demographic issues, they've got economic issues, they've got real estate, a huge real estate bubble. I don't know. I would maybe put a little money in bricks to diversify there, but I don't think that's the panacea to the US dollar.
And you don't think that's all of a sudden going to upset the legacy financial system, which is dollar dominated?
Oh, I think it will upset it.
Okay.
I think maybe it's kind of like drinking vinegar on an empty stomach. It might upset the stomach a little bit, right? I don't think it's taking the body out.
Okay.
I really don't see it taking the body out. I think it will be upsetting, but I think that those are the kinds of things that, look, there are people that are really smart, and I would even say, shoot, what's the word? Anyway, diabolical. Right? They're really smart and they're diabolical. And they're internationalists, they're globalists, right? So I mean, they're already 17 steps ahead on this BRICS stuff. And I don't think we're privy to it. We're not privy to what they're thinking and what their master game plan is. So yeah, have a little bit of your assets maybe in some BRICS currency, because maybe that will be the play and you'll be happy. But my personal belief is that whenever we can put our assets into things that they really can't get their arms around, Bitcoin, right? Crypto, but Bitcoin predominantly, I would say, gold, silver, right? They can manipulate these markets to some extent, but they're not government driven. The government can't print more gold. The government can't print more Bitcoin.
They can't print more teak either.
They cannot print more teak, and they can't print more wheat or farmland.
Sure.
Right. So again, I think there are many places where we can move assets into that are fairly independent of some of these governmental, actions, right? That are truly detrimental to us as citizens of the country and holders of the currency, right? I mean, like I hold dollars, I have paper dollars, right? But I also understand that the value of those paper dollars is exactly what it says right on it. Full faith and credit of the U.S. government. Full faith and credit. Well, okay. I mean, okay.
Sure. Okay, good. And I want to add to that. A lot of people in our community, we're very conspiracy minded. And of course, there is a conspiracy, a diabolical conspiracy. But there's a lot of media and influencers that want people to believe that there's going to be this like snap of the finger and boom, we have CBDCs, or snap of the finger and boom, the dollar is collapsed and it's a BRICS global currency or whatever. And when you were talking about infrastructure, what I was thinking of also is the global financial infrastructure is extremely convoluted, not to mention extremely difficult to change. And government acts really slow. Business and entrepreneurship innovate fast, especially in the technological sector. So look what's happening with AI. Look what happened with crypto. But like the governments and these legacy financial institutions that are embedded within government, one and the same in many instances, they move very, very slow. And something like BRICS overtaking as the global reserve currency, or even a central bank digital currency being implemented in the US in a big major economy, it's going to take some time for that to happen. And one thing that I do think that's going to happen as well, that being said, though, the point I want to make is I want to caution people against doing something hasty.
Correct.
And a lot of people seek consultations and they're like freaked out and they're ready to pull all the money out or just to unload their 401k and take the tax penalty, and they're real freaked out. So again, let us move from a principled place. Let us not be naive about what's happening in the world, and let us not do nothing, but let's not act from a place of fear and end up making a poor decision that hurts us more than it helps us.
I think great counsel, John. Great counsel.
And one thing too, I've been reading about Larry Fink and BlackRock and their involvement with Bitcoin and the ETF and this whole concept of tokenization. I think that's where things are slowly but surely going to go. Tokenizing securities. And a token, if folks aren't familiar, a token is like a digital representation of something. you have a cryptocurrency blockchain, and some of these blockchains allow you to create these little tokens, like other little cryptos. And these tokens can be tied to an ounce of gold or a security, a stock, an investment in a company. They can also be tied to digital or to natural resources as well. And so I think one of the things that they're going to do with the CBDC is create this interoperable basket of various currencies, but they all are recorded on a common ledger. And this is where things are going. But again, it's going to take a lot of time. And to bring it back to our theme for this webinar, you talked about having something that's out of the government control. That's a key element for what I believe is a good investment, something that's relatively unconfiscatable.
Yep.
It can't be just printed out of nowhere, and it has real world utility.
Utility, that's a great
And so
word.
let's bring it back to teak and timber investment. Can you share
Yep.
when you first learned about this, what piqued your interest? First, what exactly are we talking about when we say timber investment, specifically teak?
Right. Well, let me talk about teak, and then we'll come to timber, and we'll come back to teak.
Okay.
Right?
Full circle.
Full circle on that. One of the really cool, I think most people have heard of teak, right? They think about it as very high end. They use it in yachts, right? The marine environment. They use it in fine furniture. Now they're doing flooring and decking with teak. And the reason is that teak has incredible natural properties. It is so hard, that the hardness of that wood is incredible. And then the hardness lends itself to marine environments. So you don't get penetration of wood, rot, mold, fungus, and those kinds of things. So the wood itself, just by itself, is a tremendous has tremendous physical attributes, right? And then it's also beautiful. Oh my goodness, the color, it's a golden color. The grain is beautiful. So, so it's also beautiful, right? But I think the bottom line is it has strong natural characteristics and attributes. Okay. Teak was naturally from India, what is now Myanmar, Burma, Southeast Asia, and so the Chinese in that part of the world, they've been using it for more than centuries, millennia. They've been using this wood because it's just so great. Then in the 1600s, the British started plantation growing teak in India specifically, but then in some of the other areas as well. And so now you've got this 350, 400 year track record of growing something in a plantation, right? So I like track record. I love track record, right? And so if you've grown something for 350, 400 years in plantation, and especially with the British, like they took meticulous notes of everything. Soil types, rainfall, elevation, temperatures, and all these different variables, right? And how you grow it and what you do to trim it and thin it and maintain it and, scientifically manage it, they didn't call it back then, but truly scientifically manage the growth of these trees, right? And so this incredible wealth of data that's now available to professional forestry managers who can come along and just say, well, this is exactly where it grows the best, produces the highest quality of wood, the elevation, the rainfall, and those kinds of things, right? Then you take and you look at teak again as an actual lumber commodity. Those are just the trees. That's the growing of teak, right? Now you take it, you mill it, you turn it into lumber. And in the last 52 years, I guess it's 52 years now, since 1971. Anyway, 53 years, I can do math. Sometimes I can do math. Anyway, 53 years, right? In the last 53 years, since 1971, teak on average, teak lumber, the actual lumber itself, has increased in value 5.5% a year for 53 years. Again, long track record, right? And I like that. Again, it's not this, it's this brand new wood that there's always a brand new species of something or other there. It's the new, it's great. Okay, great. Talk to me about it in 50 years and tell me if it had a 5.5% increase every year for 3 years. And so growing it, long track record. Lumber as a commodity in the marketplace, long track record, strong track record. Now let's talk about timber. So we talk about teak, we'll talk about timber. The reason I like timber is because several reasons. One,
What do you mean when you say timber, right? So lumber is like taking the wood and now
Turning
it's
it
a
into-
commodity that you
yeah,
can
into
sell,
boards,
you can
right.
use to build something.
exactly.
Timber-
Timber to me is more of a broad general category. It could be pine trees, oak trees,
Okay.
mahogany, teak, right? So timber as an asset class,
Okay,
right, is broader than any one species teak.
okay.
Right now, we chose to grow teak, and I'm going to come back to why teak in a minute. A couple of the reasons I already mentioned, but there are a couple of other reasons on teak. But timber as an asset class, I mean, Harvard at one point a few years ago had 10% of its endowment in timber. 10% of the Harvard endowment was in timber, right? And you've got people like Malone and the CNN guy married to Jane Fonda. I can't think of his name, but you know what I'm talking about.
Ted Turner.
Ted Turner, thank you, Ted Turner. Yeah, Ted Turner, Malone, and others who have huge pieces of their assets in timber and family offices, right? The people that are worth, you know, hundreds of millions or billions of dollars have family offices, right? And they manage their own money. They don't go to Merrill Lynch. I mean, they take care of it themselves. They hold huge allocations of timber as an asset class.
Mhm.
Why? Really simple. You can't, like, if all of a sudden timber shoots up in value, you can't just go like, oh, I want to get into that. No, I mean, you have to plant the trees 20 years ago to be in it today, right? I mean, you can't catch up, right? So and the fact that not very many people look at an asset class like timber, the reason, by the way, the reason most, hate to use the word average investor, but let me just use that, average investor doesn't look at teak is the cash flow cycle. Okay. We have, as a society, US, Canada, North American society, we have been brainwashed into instant gratification. Our phone dings, we look at it. I mean, I just can't believe. I mean, I don't, but I mean, but like a lot of us, right? But you know, we get a paycheck every 2 weeks. That's a nice cash flow cycle. If we're landlords, we get a rent check once a month. Nice cash flow cycle. Oh, we're a dividend investor. We get our quarterly dividend. We get our annual dividend, whatever it is, right? Immediate gratification.
Yeah.
Timber can be anywhere from 12 to 13 years, say in pine, up to 35 or 40 years in something like mahogany, right? And people go, oh, I can't wait that long. Like, oh my gosh, you know, 25 year, teak's 25. So let me use that as an example. Teak's 25-year harvest cycle. Oh my gosh, 25 years. Like, okay, do you plan to be alive in 25 years? Do you have children who you hope are alive in 25 years? Do you have grandchildren that you hope are alive in 25 years? Like 25 years is coming. Hopefully I'm alive in 25. I hope my kids are alive and maybe I have some grandkids by then who are alive, right? So what you've done with timber, which is why these endowments and these family offices and the Ted Turners and the John Malones of the world, they understand that 25 years is a cash flow cycle. And it's generational. It's generational. Like a generation is 20 years, so 25 is a little more, but just call it a generation, right? And so what you have are these huge cash flow payouts every 25 years, which is kind of in line with a generation.
Sure.
And so if you're worth a ton of money, right? And you don't need any more money today or tomorrow, and you're trying to steward wealth into the future, right?
Legacy.
Leave a legacy, right? Or endowments, like big endowments, they're just trying to fund up, they're going to try to pay scholarships 25 years from now, right? Sure. So whatever. So this 25-year cash flow cycle scares the crap out of most people. And that's the reason why most average investors don't pay any attention to it. My personal belief and why I planted 100, I didn't plant it, but we hired 100 acres of teak planted in 1999 was that most people don't do it, which means that you've got this supply and demand curve. Teak specifically is being harvested 8 to 12 times faster than it's being replanted. Just pause on that for a second. Like teak in plantations and in the wild, because they're still harvesting it out of the forest, right, is being cut down, let's just say 10 times, easy number, is being 8 to 12 times, right? Depends on the year, but 10 times faster. So you've got this commodity that people want that's already in demand. It's already showing that it grows in price, 5.5% a year over 53 years, right? So now all of a sudden you've got this supply and demand imbalance kind of baked in the cake, right? I mean, we're cutting it down 10 times faster than we're replanting it. People want it. It's got these amazing qualities. Like, okay, what's it going to be worth in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 25 years, right? So this supply and demand imbalance is baked into the cake. And if all of a sudden teak's worth, 20 times more in 20 years,
Sure.
you can't go, oh, I'm just going to plant some teak.
Yeah.
No, you had to have planted it today.
Mm.
Right? So the 25-year cash flow cycle is a powerful reason to get into teak. Whereas I feel sad that so many people kind of look at that and they say, 25 years, I can't wait 25 years. You know what? 25 years is coming.
It's coming.
It's coming. And I hope that many people will look at that as a powerful reason to be into teak, as opposed to the reason to say, I can't wait 25 years. Yes, you can. Your kids can. Your grandkids can. 25 years is coming. And the returns already are tremendous. And if we continue to cut it at 10 times faster than we're replanting it, I don't know. I believe in some pretty simple basic laws of economics. I think it'll be worth.
That's a pretty foundational one.
I think it'll be
It's
worth
like
more in the
gravity.
future, right?
Sure.
It's kind of like gravity.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Supply and demand. I mean,
Yeah,
the
very
less
much.
supply, low supply, high demand,
Right?
prices go up.
Prices go up.
A lot came up for me while you were sharing that. And wow, there's tons of wisdom there, right? So, we're going to be encouraging you. I'm going to encourage you, just like I did, to take advantage of this opportunity, because I see that value and I see taking the long approach, the big picture thing when it comes to how you steward your wealth as a really critical thing. But even if folks don't take advantage, just the wisdom that's being shared here is really foundational. Let me try to break something down too that came up for me. And I'm seeing a lot of parallels between what I've learned about Bitcoin and this timber opportunity.
Okay.
So there's this great book called The Bitcoin Standard by this guy named Saifedean Amos. And it's a book that really lays out economic philosophy and applies it to Bitcoin. And one of the key things that I got from that book, because I'm always looking for those wisdoms of nugget, right?
Absolutely.
Wisdoms of nugget, nuggets of wisdom.
Well, that too.
Wisdoms of nugget, man, that'll change your life. Was this concept of time preference, okay? Time preference. And the idea is people that have a low time preference are looking for what Mike referred to as instant gratification. People that have a long time preference are willing to invest in the short term in order for a longer term payout. And the modern culture, as you were sharing, is just all obsessed with instant gratification. Who liked my post? Get the paycheck now. I want an investment to return in a week or a month, or at the very latest a year. I want to see how much I'm going to be making in a year. And as he was contrasting with average investors, right? And that's not a pejorative. We're all here learning. And there's a reason why folks that are well established and super wealthy, like the ultra wealthy, that they take that long-term approach. They're not looking for those quick fixes. Same thing with Bitcoin. Everyone's like, well, it's 10% down now. Oh, I'm going to be really hurt because I just put in, or wow, I missed out on those gains yesterday and this week. It's a long-term approach when you zoom out. And so when it comes to low time preference folks, that instant gratification really doesn't serve you. For example, someone that's always spending money on the fancy clothes and the food and going out to eat right now and not setting money aside for their children's college, for example. I'm not a big college fan, but maybe for starting a business or whatever.
Exactly.
Or a company that's always spending money now, rather than setting some money aside to launch a new division. Whenever you have a longer time preference, you don't seek that gratification in the present. Rather, you plan and prepare for the future, and that can really pay dividends. Not just for yourself and your own life, but as you were saying, when you're thinking generationally. And these elite investors and, of course, the predator class, the New World Order, they're most definitely thinking big picture. Meanwhile, everyone's thinking about the election of the day. So I just want to encourage people, when you adopt that time preference mentality and you adopt a long time preference, it's the kind of thing where on the short term, going to the gym every day, which is that's my main struggle, right? Like I excel in all these areas of life, but I'm really leaning into my health lately. You go to the gym every day, it's a pain in the ass, and then you don't see the results right away. but you see the results long term. One thing that I've been thinking of too, because like I don't drink a lot or party a lot, but whenever I do and we're planning to go out, I'm thinking that, and after I read the book, the time preference thing came into my head because I'm like, this is a low time preference thing we're about to do tonight. We're going to go party. It's going to be great in the moment, but I know I'm going to pay for it tomorrow. Right. So my time preference is, well, let's just have a good time tonight because I already had a drink and Ryan's here and we got a nice bottle of whiskey from Brothers Bond. So, but I know I'm going to pay for it tomorrow. So anyway, I just want to make the point that when you can frame life in general, but especially what you do with your money, when you have a long time preference, it definitely pays off in the long run, big time. And I was thinking too about how the supply and demand comes into play. With Bitcoin, they have these Bitcoin ETFs now, right? BlackRock's involved, big financial institutions, and there's a dwindling supply of Bitcoin. There's more people that are holding on to their Bitcoin. They don't have it available on exchanges for people to purchase. Yet BlackRock and these ETFs, which isn't actually Bitcoin, it's a representation of Bitcoin, but BlackRock has to buy that Bitcoin and hold it on behalf of their clients that have these ETFs. They're buying Bitcoin at a very much higher rate than Bitcoin is available. Same thing that you're pointing out with the timber. The supply is low and it takes a long time to actually grow it. And so even if it actually prevents people from like having this craze, like a tulip mania, where everyone's like, we got to get into timber. You can't flood the market with timber, driving the price down.
Nope.
It necessarily, because of that long time preference. So the wisdom in that, whether you take advantage of timber opportunities, teak opportunities or not, just having a longer time preference, it's not going to pay off in the end, and you may not see the results of it, and it's not going to pay off in the short term. You may not see the results of it in the short term, but longer term, just like working out, just like setting the money aside to put the down payment on the new property that you want to move, just like investing and not having to pay out for 25 years, it'll make a world of difference. And that's what the big guys are doing. That's what the wise investors are doing.
Yeah, right. And look, I think, everyone needs to go out and party once in a while and blow some steam off, right? And I think that a mixed bag of moderate behaviors is tremendous, right? Anything in the extreme, one end or the other, right? I mean, like you're missing out on something, right? So I think that for most investors, I would never bet the farm on teak or timber or metals or Bitcoin or anything, right? Again, this idea of having many baskets for our assets is really, really important.
They hedge against one another.
They do. And so, again, the idea of what can we take and put into something like teak, right? That has a 25-year time frame that might be, a very tiny piece of our investable portfolio, right? But you know what? And we haven't even talked about what teak really does, but just to give you an idea, I mean, a $7,000 teak investment, we call it baby teak, which is either teak that will be planted, although this is the planting season. So people buy it in January, February, March, and April. They're buying in advance of planting, which starts in May, June, July, August, September, because you plant in the rainy season, right? And this is a rainy season. You want the trees in the ground, rain.
And that's what the opportunity is. You put some money in and you have a team, you have folks that go and plant an actual parcel of teak, and this begins that life cycle.
Correct. It's they come in quarter acre sizes, so quarter acre parcels, and you're right. So we call it baby teak. But today, a $7,000 investment in baby teak in 25 years should be. I mean, we got to say all the disclaimer stuff, right?
Who knows?
All the disclaimer stuff, right? It's future, no one knows. Okay, but our best estimates are about $94,000. And that does not include the 5.5% a year. That's just literally, if you took the trees of average growth today, what that parcel would produce, and you cut them down today and milled them into lumber, because we do that. I mean, that's part of the return is the actual sale of the lumber, not the trees, right? Like you get $94,000. And if teak continues to go up 5.5% a year, like it has for 53 years, well, that's all on top of $94,000, right? So you say to yourself, well, okay, I already have my car, I have my house covered, and I got money for my kids' college, whatever. I got this stuff. Like now I've got this extra little pot of money over here. Like, yeah, right. It's $7,000 turns into $94,000 25 years from now. Like you can't get that kind of IRR over any 25-year period outside of things like timber. right? Not just teak, but timber generally.
Can you explain IRR in layman's terms?
I'm sorry, yes, sorry, yeah. Internal rate of return.
Yeah.
Like a lot of times we talk about return on investment, ROI,
Mhm.
right? And you look at the ROI, you say 7,000 turns into 94,000. That's, I don't know, what's that? Like 1,200% ROI, 1,200% ROI or something, right?
Mhm.
But internal rate of return takes into account the time it takes to get that return, right? If I said it's going to take 1,000,000 years to get 1,000% return, like that's not a good investment, right? If I said I'm going to give you 1,000% return in 1 year, that would be a phenomenal investment, right? But the reason they came up with internal rate of return is you say, okay, well, what's my return like on a time-based, right? And so the internal rate of return of timber, teak timber in this case, for this is about 11.5%. It's called 11, round number. It's 11%. That's a really strong internal rate of return over 25 years. You might get an IRR of 11% in 1 or 2 or 3 years, but to actually get that return over 25 years, that's why the Malones of the world, the Harvards of the world are in timber. You just get these incredible IRRs over long periods of time. 7,000 turns into 94,000, right? That is powerful. And again, if you don't need the $7,000 today and you can just say, hey, it's over here, it's gone. It's just gone for 25 years, right? Boom, there's this nice return. Then you replant. It's your quarter acre. We have a professional forestry company that does all this, right? They replant it. And 25 years later, the next harvest is for the kids or the grandkids, right? And then 25 years after that. And so you've created this true generational wealth stewardship investment, which is truly powerful. And it's the reason I did it. I mean, I did it for myself first.
You did it decades ago.
I did it 24 years ago. I want the first harvest. Then my kids will get the next harvest. My grandkids, assuming I have some, I don't know, whatever. I don't have any yet, but I mean, they'll get the next harvest, right? So, right. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so what we're talking about here is somebody investing, taking around 7,000. That's for baby teak. There's other opportunities. There's bundles. There's packages. And then you have the company that plants the baby teak.
Yes.
Time goes by. You have contracted with companies, and you guys maintain the
same company,
the plantation.
The forestry company maintains.
And you have
the
track record with these guys.
Yes, 24 years now. 24 years.
They maintain the plantation. And then aren't there like after a certain amount of years, they thin it, and then there's a little bit of opportunity there?
There is. I mean, we don't talk about the thinnings just because it's not a lot of money.
Sure.
But right, so the first couple thinnings, you cut it, you let it rot on the ground. It's good for the soil, whatever. There's no commercial value in it. When you get to the first commercially valuable thinning, it's year 12, 13, 14.
Okay.
Then there's a little bit of money. You have another thinning in year like 18, which is like just the trees that really aren't doing well.
Okay.
So you don't have a lot of money in them, but you need to get them out of there so the existing trees can grow bigger. And then the final harvest is where the money,
25 years.
25 years. That's where the real money in it is.
And so at that point, somebody that has invested can then cash out.
Yeah, they can cash out.
Or they can let it ride.
Well, okay, right, because it's their land.
Sure.
You have title of the land, it's your trees, right? And if you said, Mike, don't cut my trees, I just want to let them keep growing. Okay, it's your trees, do whatever you want, right? We will presumably be cutting almost everybody's, and I would probably say everybody's trees in year 25 as part of our contract. So we have a management contract, right? We make money on the proceeds of the final harvest. That's where we really make most of our money. And we make a little bit on the front end because we have a team of people. It has to go in and plant the trees and maintain them and all that kind of stuff, right? But at the end of the day, our management contract is for 20% of the harvest proceeds. So if we make you more money, we make more money. And I'm a big believer in alignment of interest.
Sure.
Right. So if you get $100,000, we get 20. And by the way, the 94 is after we got our 20 round numbers, right? You got 100, we got 20, we're all happy, right? But if we can figure out a way to get 200, well, great, we're going to get 40 and you're going to get 160.
Sure.
That's a big win for you. It's a bigger win for us, right? So the alignment of interest is important. So we have a management company. We work on that basis for the harvest. But if somebody said, don't cut my trees, well, they're your trees, we won't cut them. But presumably, I think most people are gonna say, yeah, cut my trees, let's put them through the sawmill, let's turn them into lumber, and let's get the money. And then, today, if we had to replant the parcel today, it'd be like $350.
But what I meant with letting it ride would actually be, you guys go ahead and take the money that we made from selling our teak and let's plant some more teak.
Oh, we will automatically replant on your parcel, right? $350. So we give you 94,000 minus 350. What's that? 93,600, right? We give you 93,600. We keep
Or
400.
you could say, I want even more parcels now.
Oh, you could definitely, oh yeah, you could expand your interest in more teak. Absolutely.
And so
Yeah, absolutely.
what somebody actually is investing is when somebody's buying, when they take advantage of this, is title to that piece of the plantation and a contract with your management company to maintain, to harvest, and to turn into a valuable asset that some lumber company buys.
Yes, some, like a Home Depot, right? Yeah, right. That ultimately it's the lumber that's going into the distribution channel that would end up in a place. I don't have teak in Home Depot, but the wholesalers and the distribution channel that sell teak. Teak is generally pushed out to specialty carpentry shops. There's not a lot of it.
Yeah.
Right. So I mean, you go to Home Depot, there's aisles of pine and pine, a little bit of oak and birch or whatever, right? Maybe some maple. Teak is very rarely, if ever, in a place like that. It's going into people who buy it for boats, for furniture, very specific furniture, right? And now flooring. And so one of the things that in fact, I'm in the process of building our very first sawmill right now.
Cool.
To take that harvest from the very first plantation. The trees are 24 years old. We're going to wait 2 more years. COVID, we couldn't get in to do the thinning and the trimming. So we're just going to let them grow 2 more years. And then, and we're going to turn it into lumber, but we're also going to turn it into what I call first stage finished product, like flooring. Flooring is basically lumber that's been, sanded up a little bit nicer on one side and routed and bullnosed on the other, so they can join them as flooring, right? But the value add, the price in the marketplace on flooring over lumber is about a 3x. So why wouldn't we want to make that 3x, right? Because again, when we make more for the client, we make more. So like we just, we want to try to find ways to help everybody make more, and that, and the market sets the price. We're just doing the extra value add to capture that additional margin. Sure. Right. And so we're happy to do it because we're going to make 20% of the additional margin.
Okay. I see the questions coming in, and Patty, we see that you have your hand raised. We're going to hit a couple more things, and then we're going to go through these questions piece by piece because I see how they fit in where I was bringing the conversation here shortly. First, though, Rebecca and I got a teak parcel about a year ago, maybe a little over a year ago. So we ourselves are invested in, and as you know, we don't put folks in front of our audience unless we're committed, right? Or unless we have trust, or unless we're doing it ourselves. So can you step through what the process might look like, and maybe go ahead and share that email address if folks want to learn more, hop on the phone with one of your people, and then I know you have a special offer if people go ahead and send that email today. But then after that, can you step through the process of how someone actually executes on this? Because I went through the process myself, and your team was very helpful. So what does that look like?
Thank you. I would also, at some point before we jump into the questions, like to talk about one of the main reasons people choose to do the teak investment over other things. It's the residency. So I'd like to, because look, we're both about freedom. We're here at Freedom Fest, right? I mean, we are the voice of freedom differently, but it's an important message. And the residency is a big chunk of why teak has been important to so many of our clients. So I would like to.
Another example of not putting your eggs all in one basket too.
Right.
The most important eggs we got.
Us.
Yeah,
us, exactly. Sorry, what was the question?
What does the process actually look like?
Got it. Yeah. So, it's really easy. I think everyone here who's on the webinar today has already reached out. They've gotten a link, but if you send an email, and we always like to give folks a reason to do something right now. right? I mean, you can do it next week or next month or next year, right? We're going to be doing this. We've already been doing it for 24 years. We're going to do it for 24 more years. I don't care. But we want to give people a good reason to do something right now. And anybody who emails today based on this to info@ecidevelopment.com, info@ecidevelopment.com, put in the subject line Teak or whatever, and we'll talk about, or if we talk about the residency piece and that's something that's of interest, put Teak and residency in the subject line, right? We're going to offer $500 off the package, whether it's a single parcel, whether it's a bundle to get residency, $500 off. And everything gets done and papered up by the end of the month. So we have a couple weeks, July 31st. So email today and have everything kind of put together. You'll have plenty of time to look at the paperwork, go through it.
Plenty of time to ask questions if they want to talk to somebody on the phone.
We have incredible property and residency consultants. Our team is highly versed in this. We've helped, I think it's now close to 1,400 folks, a little over 1,300 folks have gone through this process, not always in Teak. Sometimes it's in a home, but most are in Teak. So yes, we have a great group of people. They've done this many, many times for folks. That's it. Just send us an email today. We'll get you the paperwork. You can get on the phone with one of our property consultants, spend some time and make sure it's right for you. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but to send an email today is easy, right? That's just right now. Just send an email and then look at the paperwork. And if you transact, $500 off if we get it done by the end of the month, which is plenty of time to, put the ball in motion and then, move it forward.
And so it's asking any questions you have. And then you actually, if you want to move forward, a wire transfer, and then there's like a title, like they're doing the titling paperwork for the parcel and the contracts with the management company.
All of that. Now, the titling paper, the title itself, I always like to tell people this. In fact, when you're on the phone or you see the information, it talks about this. The titling process can take anywhere from 6 months to 18 months. And I know in the US, we're just like, I
Time preference.
Well, you go to a settlement, like usually the bank gets the mortgage, it gets the title, the bank gets a title, right? You have a mortgage. But if you had the money and you just bought a house and you went to the settlement table, you'd be getting a title, right? The titling system in Latin America is definitely a lot more inefficient. It takes a lot longer. It's much more bureaucratic. The good news is that what we call the promesa de venta, the contract of sale, is an absolutely binding document on us, the seller. 100% binding on us. We have no wiggle room. And so while it might take 6, 8 months, 10, 12 months to get your title, your physical title, you have the assurity in the legal system that contract is fully binding and you will get your title. It just takes, well, I would say forever. It just takes forever. It feels like forever. It's not, but yeah.
How long do you say again usually?
6 to 8 months is normal. A year sometimes, and sometimes as long as 18 months. One of the things that we find is that when it really starts to stretch out, I'll give you an example of what, let me give you an example of what, no, I want not to do, but let me give you an example of what to do. There are going to be 10 things that you need to present in order to get title. A utility bill that's been notarized and apostilled, a bank statement, a letter of reference from an accountant, a letter of reference from a lawyer or a personal friend, a couple letters of reference. You're going to have to fill out all the paperwork. You're going to have to get it notarized. You're going to have to get something called an apostille. And nobody knows what that is, right?
That's
and
French.
Yeah, maybe it is. Yeah. Well, Napoleon wrote the civil code by hand. Yeah, so it might be French as I think about that. Anyway, right. But you have to take, so you get out of your bank and the notary stamps it. You actually have to send that paperwork to the Secretary of State in your state. So in Texas, you'd go down to the bank, get your, whoever's there to notarize it for you. You would then take it and put it in an envelope. You would mail it to the Secretary of State in, I guess, Austin, right? I guess it was Secretary of State. They would then validate that notary is a legal notary in the state of Texas. They'll stick a big red seal on it, send it back. That's what an apostille is. One of the things that we find, and I'll say what happens, because people will get like 90% of the documents and they'll send them. And then they won't have this last one, and the last one will drag, and then they'll send the last one, or they won't send the last one. And then it just gets in this cycle of trying to play catch up with your documents. absolutely. The way to do it is to get 100% of your documents on your desk or your kitchen table at home, completed, apostilled, everything, right? All your letters of reference. You take pictures of them, you scan them, you send it to your property consultant. Here are all my documents. Do I have everything? When they say yes, you put it in a FedEx pack or a DHL pack, FedEx or DHL, no exceptions, and you send it. And then 6 months, 8 months, you have title.
And your team will hold somebody's hand through that entire process.
Whole process. And if you want residency, that's where it actually starts to stretch out a little bit, because you're going to need to get a police record. You're going to have to get fingerprint, records. And I mean, like they want all of this because you're going to become a resident of their country. They want to know that you're, upstanding citizen of your own country before they say, oh yeah, we'll let you be a resident of our country. So anyway, if you do the residency program, there are additional documents and process that come along with it as well.
Okay. Somebody said add the email address to the chat, but I don't even know if we have a chat. So, okay. It's info@ecidevelopment.com. info@ecidevelopment.com. We'll follow up with the email on that.
We absolutely will.
So,
yes.
Okay, before we get to these questions, because there's a lot of great questions rolling through,
Okay.
and I still see you there, Miss Patty, and we'd love for you guys to raise your hand. I should be able to bring you on too. That's my favorite way to do the questions. Talk about residency, and specifically, we're talking about a couple countries here that the plantations are in.
Yep.
So what are these countries, and why should someone... It just doesn't have to be for Americans, right? Somebody's
Canadians or Australians.
Why would we want second residency? It's not something I have, but it's something that Rebecca and I are definitely interested in.
You're right. Look, people talk about asset protection, right? We're always talking about, we want to protect assets, and we think about money, metals, cars, stocks, bonds, houses, real estate. Like we want to protect stuff, right? But actually, if we really think about what the most valuable asset we have, it's us, right? It's our physical
body.
It's our body. It's our being, right? And if things go off the rails, and look, I believe in prudence. I believe in a plan B. I don't think anyone in Canada imagined that the Canadian government would freeze their bank accounts because they donated to a trucker group, right? Peaceful protest. You make a donation, and now all your bank accounts are frozen, right? I mean, like this is, well, it's a lot of things. Anyway, it's just bad, right? It's just bad.
If things go off the rail, I'm thinking they went off the rails just a few years ago.
Yes.
It was nuts.
They
Some places were worse than others.
Some places,
for
right.
sure.
Australia, you mentioned somebody from Australia here with us, right? I mean, we had a ton of people moving to Nicaragua because of what was happening in Australia and New Zealand, right? And so, yeah, it did go off the rails, right? Maybe we have to train back on. I don't know. Maybe not. Different people have different opinions.
Hopefully that's the worst that we see in our lifetime.
I hope so, right? I really hope so. Anyway, but these things, but I think that the idea of the benevolence of government, that myth was shattered when they froze those bank accounts, or when they closed all the businesses and they mandated masking and show me your papers to be able to go into a restaurant. And I mean, just on
perhaps the most egregious, you can't be there for your loved one on their deathbed.
Right?
That was the most important of all.
Correct. I mean, and I think this myth of, our government's benevolent and, bull crap. They're not, right? I mean, they're not. And so this was a huge wake up call to people. And so we saw a ton of people saying, you know what? Like, I need to have a place to go. I need some way to protect the most important asset I have, which is me, and I need the freedom. And I mentioned this earlier in the conversation, this idea that, I'm just gonna, can I say shit? Yeah, okay.
We'll allow it.
I know, beep hits the fan, right? If shit hits the fan, right? Like, I'm just gonna go. I'm gonna leave. And this is another myth we have as US and Canadians, and maybe Aussies too, right? That if shit hits the fan, I'm just gonna leave. Guess what? No problem. You fly to Belize, Nicaragua, Panama, you're in Australia, you fly to Japan or wherever you want to fly to. I mean, like, I'm getting out of here. Great. You're very fortunate. You have a very you have a great passport. It lets you travel to 100 countries, visa free. You walk in, the immigration officer says, welcome to Belize, for example, or Panama. They stamp it. But in 90 days, you have to leave. But the whole point of leaving was not to leave. The whole point of leaving, if shit hits the fan, is to actually stay out, right? It's not to get out, it's to stay out. And the only way to stay out and live in another country legally and legitimately is to have a residency that allows you to do that. In the US, it's a green card, right? So I mean, a lot of US folks here, right? It's a green card. You're not a citizen, you don't have a passport, but you have a green card that says, I can stay in the United States. I'm a resident of this country, right? And I know Mexico's got a great, I call it informal program. They have some good formal programs too, by the way. But you know, a lot of people were doing this informal program. Oh, I'm just going to get on immigration, get my passport re-stamped every 90 days. I'm going to run across the border. We had people in Panama. They'd come up to Costa Rica. People in Costa Rica go to Panama for the weekend, come back, get their passport stamped for another 90 days. Okay, right? This program worked until COVID. It worked until it didn't work. And when COVID hit and the borders shut down and the immigration offices shut down, a whole bunch of people throughout the world, but I know Central America pretty well, a whole bunch of people in Central America became illegal immigrants in a foreign country. Okay.
Not everyone's as friendly as the US when it comes to that stuff.
Exactly. Exactly. And you know what? The governments were benevolent, right? They understood the circumstances and the situation, but I don't want my physical freedom to be dependent upon the benevolence of a bureaucrat, ever. I mean, maybe they will be, maybe they won't. Why would I want to risk that? When I can actually have a residency, I can get a residency through Teak investment, and it's not the $7,000 package, right? It's about a $32,000. It's 4 Teak parcels and another $4,000 or $5,000 of legals.
And this is the government in exchange for you investing in their country.
Yes.
They grant you residency.
Right. So you make an investment of at least $30,000. And I'm going to use Nicaragua specifically because I like Nicaragua as a place for residency. Right. Panama offers it. Belize offers it on different terms, different countries. But in Nicaragua, $30,000 investment and about, $3,000-ish, a little less than 3,000, but of government and legal fees then gives you a residency in the country. You have the legal right to live in that country for as long as you want. So, right. So if
what about work?
No work. Now, you can't have a job. You can't have a job. Like you can't go work at the restaurant or whatever. But if you want to start a business, have at it. Hire some Nicaraguans. They'll love you, right?
What about computer virtual work?
Yeah, virtual work. Perfect. I mean, you just do it. I mean, you're just doing it from there, but you're not really working in the country. Okay. You're not taking a job from a local, right? That's the issue, right? Are you contributing to employment, starting a business? You just can't take work from a local, okay. Right? So so remote work is perfect. Starting a business is fine. And they're very welcoming because look, no matter what you do in that country, you are contributing to their economy far more than the average citizen of that country does, right? The average GDP might be, $3,000-4,000 a year. $3,000-4,000 a year. That's the whole GDP that individual plugs into the economy, right? I mean, you might put that in a month, right? So you're 10, 12 times, the economic input, right, to the country. So US, Canadians, Aussies, whatever, we are welcome there because even if we're not doing anything, so to speak, we didn't create a business, just living there does so much for the economy. Anyway, but residency is important because it gives us the right to stay. And I think that's the important piece that we just have to remember. Yeah, we can get out anytime we want, but how do we stay out? And so anyway, I think we covered that.
Okay, yeah. Here's a question that's related. Preedy is saying, what are the selling points of the countries you choose to invest in? Why should we care to get residence in Nicaragua or Panama? Can you speak to the pros and cons of those nations? And you talked about benevolent governments in the context of fleeing Australia or Canada, but I mean, obviously they don't have benevolent governments either, but it's all relative. What's the story? Why Nicaragua? Why Panama?
Great question. Thank you for that, by the way. I'm a big fan of Nicaragua. I lived there for 14 years. I found the country to be wonderfully safe, peaceful, just a tremendous place to live, low cost of living, high quality of life. Panama is very similar, by the way, for all of those things. I wouldn't say there was any substantive difference between Panama and Nicaragua on those fronts. The key reason I like Nicaragua for a second residency, which is where I carry mine, by the way, be fully transparent, is that during COVID, Panama went crazy with their lockdowns. They had a system where men and women could go out on different days. I think, women Monday, Wednesday, Friday, men Tuesday, Thursday. And you could only go out for 2 hours, and it was based on the last couple numbers of your ID card.
And they enforced it.
And they enforced it.
Wow.
hard. And Nicaragua, they never shut businesses down. They didn't mask mandate. They didn't vax mandate. Look, if you were a business and you wanted to shut down, great. You wanted to spread your tables out at a restaurant, spread your tables out. But that was the choice of the individual or the business owner. It wasn't the government mandating it. And so they really had this very free libertarian approach to the COVID crisis, whereas Panama went, I think, full on, statist, and Nicaragua took a very laissez-faire kind of attitude. That doesn't mean that would happen in the future. I get that. I mean, maybe, flip-flop and change. But what I know about the two countries, I feel very comfortable with a second residency in Nicaragua. Belize has a second residency program, and it's $250,000, right? The other thing I like about both Panama and Nicaragua is they're very inexpensive. Panama is about 22,000. Nicaragua is 32,000, right? So as second residencies go, they're very affordable. You go to a place like Belize, it's 250,000, right? If you go to the US, if somebody said, our Aussie friend says, I want to live in the US, I don't know why, but anyway, he might. But $1.8 million, right? Oh, you want to be a European citizen? Oh, I'm going to get the Portuguese EU residency, the golden visa. It's €500,000, which is maybe 600,000 US. So, I mean, so there different countries have different programs. The reason I like Nicaragua and Panama specifically is they're very affordable. The reason I like Nicaragua over Panama is because of the laissez-faire attitude they had during COVID, allowing people to make their own choices and not mandating something. So anyway, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah. Patty, we're going to go to you in just one sec. Tom, I see you had that question up at the top, but there's other questions that are on theme here. And we're going to go for about another 30 minutes or so, unless you guys got like tons of questions. But let's see. There's a question about, somebody's asking about crime in regards to the investment. So let's kind of mix this in. Talk about crime in this area. And I'll just say, I've never been to Nicaragua, although Mike's been pulling our arm to come down there and visit soon. I'm shifting my life so I can travel more and still serve you guys like we are here today at the hotel.
I'm sorry, this Las Vegas?
Yeah.
In Nicaragua? Come on.
Yeah, same thing. Right. I've been to Mexico. I actually lived in Mexico for 6 months.
You went to Mexico?
Oh, sorry. In Acapulco, right? Murder capital of the world. You've spent a lot of time there as well.
I have.
And my parents, because my mom's family is actually from Mexico. My great grandfather's born and raised in Mexico. And the media and the cartels are killing everyone on the streets. And when we went down there, we never had a lick of any issues. Now, mind you, the law enforcement's cruising up and down the street, but that's for a reason, right? And there are crimes that do happen, and the murder isn't fake, but a lot of it is gang on gang violence. Yeah. And so I imagine it's the same in Nicaragua, Panama. Panama's probably even more cleaned up, right? You just don't be a dummy when you're down there. And I think Live Free Academy has an older crowd and stuff, but for younger folks that are not that older people don't party, just don't get all drunk and go try to buy drugs and be a total dork. And they treat the tourist really well because the tourists contribute to the economy. So can you talk about crime? And then how does crime relate to the teak investment, the timber?
Okay.
And then also, looks like Preeti's also talking about, like, what if some authoritarian government takes over and they're like, all these dang gringos have been taking over our economy. This guy, Mike Cobb, we're going to take over his plantation. I mean, this stuff has happened in the past.
Yeah. Okay. I think you did a great answer on the general crime issue, right? Lightning can strike anywhere, but generally, crime is A, locational, right? And B, behavioral, right? I mean, look, it's gang on gang happens in certain neighborhoods, right? If I said Chicago's a dangerous city, Well, I'm sorry. Let's look at the zip codes. And if you took 5 or some number of the zip codes out of Chicago, the crime rate in Chicago would plummet. On the other hand, if you just looked at those 5, it would be as bad as Afghanistan or something, right? I mean, like, so crime is location specific, but it's also behavior specific, right? If you're out drinking and looking for drugs at 3 a.m, you're probably going to find some trouble, or you could find some trouble, right? So again, location and behavior, you answered that side of it. Look, I do not worry about the governments of the countries we work in, Central America specifically, expropriating our properties, or your properties if you decide to own one. Could it happen? Yeah, sure. I mean, and anything can happen, right? Governments, if you owned a home in Connecticut, near where they wanted to build a Walmart, the government of Connecticut declared eminent domain and took a whole bunch of people's houses in this little town in Connecticut. Look it up, so they could build a Walmart, because Walmart would pay a lot more taxes than these 30 little houses would pay.
That
right?
shows in the public interest. The
That's
eminent
public
domain's actually in the Fifth Amendment. A lot of people don't know this.
I didn't
It's
know that.
enshrined in the Bill of Rights that the government can take property as long, the right, I guess,
Yeah.
is that only if it's in the public interest.
Public interest,
But
right?
that's defined by the bureaucrats.
Yeah, absolutely. A Walmart, right? And it wasn't a road, it wasn't a dam, or
Yeah.
it was a Walmart, right?
Jeez.
Anyway, yeah. So I think governments can do whatever they want. The US government proves they can do it. The Canadian government locks everybody down and takes their, locks up their bank accounts, right? So these things can happen by any government. The thing that I would say about a country like Panama, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Belize is that, they don't have giant economies. They don't have this infrastructural, flywheel going for them, right? Tourism and foreign investment are big factors in their economy. And the first time one of these governments, expropriates US owned property, there's foreign investment will dry up in a heartbeat. Tourism will dry up in a heartbeat. Look, Venezuela is a, I hate to say good example, but it's a good example of a bad example, right? The reason Venezuela could expropriate all these people's properties and do all this nonsense that they're doing is they have more oil than any other country in the Americas, except for the US and Canada, right? They got this giant oil reservoir underneath them. And so they don't need foreign investment. They just pump some oil out. Now they're having problems because, like all their oil wells are, getting old and not getting fixed because nobody's willing to go down and put foreign investment into it, right? Nicaragua, Panama, Belize, Costa Rica, they don't have oil. They don't have gold to speak of. They don't have, any natural resources to speak of that would be their ATM machine. And so they are highly dependent upon foreign investment. And so do I say it could never happen? No, of course not. It could definitely happen. Do I think it's unlikely in those countries? I think the answer is yes, because they need and want the foreign investment because it's such a critical, major piece of their economic engine. So anyway.
That's a great question that's asked. And I do want to point out too, like, we're never going to live in a world, nor will we ever find an investment that is absent of any risk, right? So it's all measuring certain things off of one another. And when it comes to crime too, now that I'm thinking about it, like, a lot of big major US cities are becoming crime ridden, and the paradigm's kind of like flipping around where we Americans, and we're living in the West, and we're like, la, these poor countries are all impoverished and in crime. And it's like, man, the US is in decline big time. Now, that not everywhere, of course, and it's all about what we choose to focus on, and like you said, where you happen to live. But it's definitely something to consider. And it's also like these countries are in competition amongst one another.
Bingo.
It's not just a vacuum here. So if this country all of a sudden takes over and expropriates, and then the other country, the investment goes over there, then they're going to have a powerhouse. There's more money to invest in the military. Now, all of a sudden, this country gets weaker, and they whatever. It's all there's all sorts of things to consider.
And by the way, real quick, you mentioned the risk and investment, right? I mean, the whole point of, like, if you want your money to be safe, put it in your mattress. Bury it in your backyard, right? Like, don't give it to a bank, because a bank, we have FDIC and all that kind of stuff, right? But the point is, like, there are no real investments that have no risk, right? And so would I put all of my eggs, would I even put a big part of my eggs into, teak in Panama or Nicaragua? No way, right? Would I put some of it in that basket? Absolutely. Again, but by diversifying across geographies, maybe I would do, a little bit in Nicaragua, a little bit in Panama. Maybe I'd look at a property in Portugal if I had enough investable assets, right? Maybe I'd, again, by doing this diversification of asset class and geographically, you get the most hedging against risk, right? I think that's the key, the most hedging against risk. If you have all your money in the stock market and we have a 1929 event, right, which could happen. Look, we have all this commercial real estate. I mean, this is all Las Vegas. I mean, these are all hotel rooms, right? But you look at major cities around the US, I mean, the old joke is, if you owe the bank $100,000, you've got a big problem. If you owe the bank $100 million, the bank's got a big problem.
The taxpayer has a big problem.
You're not getting right. And so we're seeing these office buildings, right? These leases coming due, and these big companies are just not taking the space, right? Well, we don't need the space. Half my workers are not working from here anymore. They're working, right? And so, that can is being kicked down the road by the banks. They're just re-upping the old loans. They're not calling the dues. I mean, right? There's a reckoning there that I think I actually think it'll be a soft landing. There's my prediction. I think there'll be a soft landing on that, but you can't have a soft landing without repercussions, right? There will be massive repercussions. It'll be the taxpayer. We're going to be bailing these banks out and these big REITs and, the Blackstones. I mean, all these guys, right? I mean, they got tons of money in this office stuff. How did I get off on that tangent? Anyway, it doesn't matter.
We're talking about risk.
Right. So if you have all your money in the US stock market, it drops 50%. Like, I mean, let's say you have $100,000 in the stock market, and it drops 50%. You just lost 50 grand. Right? You have $7,000 in teak in Panama, and the government comes and takes it from you. You lost $7,000. I don't know. I mean, like, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it would suck. I mean, right? Nobody likes to lose 7,000 or 50,000, right? But again, that diversification of assets, I think, gives us. I actually don't think both would happen. One or the other might happen, or both could happen, or neither could happen.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And it's you don't have to go all in on teak. Depending on where people are financially, you could go big on teak, or you could just start with one parcel.
Absolutely.
And that helps you with the hedge against the other stuff. Okay, I'm really I just really value my audience because these are great questions coming in. So let's do our best hit them. Let's hit Patty here. Patty's been waiting.
I'm gonna make short answers. We're gonna
short answers. I'll do my best too. That's always my struggle. Okay, let's go to Patty. Hopefully Patty's still there. You should be able to answer a question now. I'm asking you to unmute, and I know that you've had your hand up for quite some time. Miss Patty Holloway, if you'll unmute yourself, we'd gladly hear from you. And in the meantime, let's go ahead and go to Tom here. Tom had the very first question.
Okay.
Is Tom still with us? Tom's still with us. Okay, good. Tom asks, while I recognize the benefit of hard assets such as silver and gold, there are some tax implications with trading them.
Yep.
Seems like real estate is a more solid investment. After all, the Gates, China, and other large businesses are buying much real estate in US. So let's talk about the tax implications, and let's talk about teak versus real estate. It kind of is real estate, but teak versus real estate. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, it is real estate. You own the quarter acre or however much you buy, right? You own it. It's titled to you. They're really today. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a tax advisor. Consult your lawyer. Consult your tax advisor. I hope that's my good disclaimer. Anyway, my understanding of the law right now is that if you own a property in your own name, it's not a reportable asset. So real estate held in your own name is not a reportable asset on any of the forms. Income generated from that asset is reportable, right? It's the harvest, and you get the income. You have to report that and pay your taxes on it. So all taxes will be paid in, say, Panama or Nicaragua, whichever country, because there are some income taxes there as the process. It goes from log to lumber to sale. Some income taxes are paid there. Then the distribution to you in your home country would be dependent upon the laws of your home country as to whether there was a tax treaty with Panama that could offset, or Nicaragua that could offset, some of those taxes or not, or if it's taxable at all. Many countries don't tax their citizens on worldwide income. The U.S. does, right? So
we tax on everything here.
Right. So anyway, but the asset itself, because you're holding it for the 25 years, would have next to no income. The thinning year in 12, 13, a little bit, year 18, another thinning with a little bit. but
And
the
are we looking
harvest.
at capital gains then?
No, I don't know. I'm not an
Okay,
accountant or tax advisor. I think the answer is no. I think it's ordinary.
Okay, and more questions like that, go ahead and email info@ECI Development, hop on the phone with one of their specialists and y'all can dial that in. And then they can also help you with the specific questions that you want to then forward to your CPA or
Yes.
whatever, if whatever you want to dial things in. And now I'm thinking if anyone joined us for the Trinity Masterclass or the webinar, and you're familiar because you're advising on our property project, but we're going to be starting a ministry, right? And we're going to be holding little congregational meetings and all this stuff. But you could put a teak investment in your church as part of the church endowment, and this whole thing
the
would
church
then be
endowment.
tax exempt.
Yeah, endowment.
So just that's how, the cool thing that we present at Live Free Academy. A lot of it's overlapping and interwoven. So that's just something that was exciting there. Patty, if you're still with us, I'm asking you to unmute and then we'll be able to hear your question. If anybody else has questions that they want to ask directly, like speaking with us or coming up on video, you can raise your hand and we'd love to hear you talk. Okay, so let's continue on here. Anonymous attendee says, any risk of disease, beetles that could wipe out the trees until harvest time? Let's also address fire. So these are some of the other risks as well. What does that look like? How often does that happen? What would happen if that did happen? Well,
sure. Let me answer it simply. Disease, pests, fire, yes, yes, and yes. All three could happen. It's an investment. It's an agricultural investment. All three, any of those could happen. Again, we've seen teak plantation grown for 350 years. They've got great analytics on it, great great history. Like they've worked through a lot of these problems over 350 years. But yes, they do control for pests, mostly ants, by the way, cutter ants, leaf cutter ants. So they'll control for those. They do watch out for disease. And the nice thing about fire, by the way, teak drops its leaves. The first 3-4 years, teak is vulnerable to fire. But then because part of the maintenance process is cutting off all the low limbs, because what you want are long, tall, straight trunks. And so by the time the trees are 4 years old, they're up 25, 30 feet, and you've cut all the branches off the first 15 to 20 feet. And they drop their leaves in the dry season, which is when you see the most fire danger. If the trees get to year 4, they're almost impervious to fire. Not 100%, but pretty impervious to fire. The first 3 years, you have your greatest fire risk. Yeah.
And so if there were to be like a catastrophic failure, it would be a lost investment for the investor and for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
It would be a loss.
Yeah, but
that's one of the risks.
But you would
it's
still
a small risk.
Right, but you would still own the land.
Okay.
You would still own the land, and if you decided you wanted to replant,
$350,
$350, $400 to
on some
replant.
more fertile soil because it just got burned.
True.
Okay. Good. And then has that happened since you've been on your watch? What are some of the stuff that's happened?
We've had some fires. The pest and the plague, disease, none of that. We've had a couple fires. But one of the things we do is because we have professional maintenance, we have fire breaks around. We understand fires are mostly set by adjoining farmers to burn their fields, right? I mean, it's still slash and burn agriculture. I mean, you think about that. I mean, it's truly slash and burn agriculture. And so, when the neighbors are burning, we usually have people out there to, keep it in the neighbor's property, right? We've had a few fires come through in the first couple of years. And in fact, we didn't even charge to replant. We actually replanted the teak in a couple areas where people's teak had been burned.
Okay.
So, I mean, like we're happy. Look, at the end of the day, like what we want is 20% of $100,000.
Sure.
Like 350 to replant some teak that get burned out in year 1 or 2. Like we're happy to do it, or we'll eat that, right? Because at the end of the day, we're going to make $20,000 if we do that.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and it's in your interest to stay on the management company to make sure that and it's a managed forest. It's not like in California where these wildfires are happening because the government's like, this is conservation and you can't even mess with it.
No, managed forest.
Okay, great question though. All right, we're gonna start hitting through these. We're gonna try to wrap in a good 15 minutes or so. How many trees are planted per quarter acre, says Mark Berg?
All right, so I can answer it a little differently. Per hectare, which is 2.5 acres. So let me work the math backwards. Per hectare, it's 1,100, and it's 1/10 of a hectare, so 110.
Okay.
Yep.
And Mark's also
Oh, by the
asked-
way, but by the time you harvest, there'll be 23 to 27 trees.
Okay.
So you actually thin 3/4 of the trees over the process of the plantation. So you start with 110 per quarter acre, you end up with, 23 to 27.
Okay.
Yep.
And again, the call to action, we're encouraging folks, email Mike's team info@ecidevelopment.com. The letters ECI, info@ecidevelopment.com. Let them know you're interested in teak and or the residency. And then if you guys start the process, they get your questions answered and everything's all settled by the end of the month. If it drags on to the beginning of the next month, maybe you had to go talk to this person to get this in order. He's not gonna be a stickler.
No, but we just want to see the process in motion.
Get started.
Yep.
You'll get $500 off, no matter if you do a larger parcel or whatever.
Right.
And it starts around
And
7K.
Well, and it'd be 500 off each parcel. So
500 off each
Right.
parcel.
So if somebody did 4 parcels, it'd be 500 off, $2,000, right?
Sweet.
It's $2,000 off. Yeah. So it's 500 off each parcel.
And the minimum is around 7,000,
Yeah,
and that's
correct.
a quarter acre parcel.
Yep.
That could potentially turn in, I'm hoping ours turns into 95K or
You
more.
got it. Yep.
Okay. But there's also risk. It could end up being a total flop,
Zero.
right?
Right. Yep.
But that's life. How big is the plantation? And don't you have multiple plantations?
We do. We now have 3 plantations in Panama. One is 100 acres. One is 90 hectares. They do hectares. Sorry. So 90 times 2.5 is what? 250, 230 acres. And the other one's about 60 acres. So we have 3 plantations in Panama. And our plantation in Nicaragua is all as part of our Grand Pacifica property. Maybe just under 300 acres now. It's 200 and some acres. So yeah, so
It's got a mogul over here. Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Gabriel's asking, does anyone watch over the property? How do you guard against theft? So yeah, there's a management
Yeah.
company. What about
On-site.
theft? They're gonna cut down the trees or what?
You know what?
That happened?
Yeah, no, I don't know, maybe, I don't think so. There's no really truly foolproof way to guard against what I would call individual theft, right? One of your neighbors, his wife needs, whatever, some dental work or has to have an operation. He goes in there in the middle of the night, with a non-motorized saw, 2 guys doing this, right? Cuts a tree down, cuts the limbs off, has his horse drag it out of the forest in the middle of the night. Like you cannot stop that, right? So that could happen. But to actually have somebody come in and actually with mechanized, it's an industry.
Yeah.
I mean, this is industrial, right? I mean, you have to come in with big chainsaws and tractors and forklifts and
Very impractical.
yeah. So it would be hard for somebody to steal trees other than that one off for some crazy case. And the truth is, if somebody did that, everybody in the neighborhood would know about it.
Yeah.
Right? So very, very hard to do.
Okay.
Yep.
Anonymous attendee says, love the pitch and discussion on this topic. Is the $500 discount on any size property? And thanks for clarifying, if they buy multiple parcels,
Yeah.
that's 500 off
Per
each
parcel.
parcel,
Yep.
which could really add up. Lowest investment is a quarter acre, around 7,000. If you go for 1 acre, is the discount expanded to 2,000? We'll already just answer this.
Yes.
So great question. The 500 is for each parcel. And I know you guys have some bundles and some little packages.
We
and
do. We
stuff.
do have some bundles as well. Yeah, I don't remember them. Don't hold me. I'm sure. But
Yeah,
our
are y'all
folks
still doing
do.
the bundle where they can get the teenage also?
We are sold out or close to sold out of our teenage teak. That would be a great question to ask our property consultants.
Okay.
We bought a plantation in Panama that was, I don't know, 13, 14 years old at the time, and now it's whatever, 4 years older. So anyway, those trees, the nice thing about that, and one of the reasons people like it is they can own that and they don't have to wait 25 years to get the harvest. It's like 8 more years or whatever it is, right? So right, so you get a harvest in 8. Now you pay more for it up front. I can't remember.
Yeah,
what the
not
number
much
is.
bang for your buck, but shorter time.
And then it goes into the 25-year cycle after that. But the property consultants have the exact information and how many of those are left. We're getting close to sold out, or we may be sold out of our teenage teak.
Yeah, I know we did a webinar about a year ago or over a year ago, and I know that was a pretty hot option. So if
Yeah.
you guys call
Yeah.
them and there is one available, because then you get to pay out in 25 years. It's a bundle, it's a package, right? You
Yeah.
get to pay out in 25 years. You also get a shorter term payout.
Yeah.
So what
Right.
would they ask about that for that?
Say teenage teak.
Teenage teak.
Teenage teak would be the thing to ask. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
anonymous attendee, what about Belize? You mentioned Belize earlier. How does Belize compare in terms of freedom? And then let's mix in this other question here I saw. Oh, well, there's a lot of questions coming in now. Okay, so what about Belize?
Let me say, I would say Belize kind of hit somewhere in between Nicaragua and Panama. They did lockdowns. They had some masking mandates, things like that. It was definitely not as draconian as Panama was. The thing about Belize, there's really no teak there. If you want to grow a wood species, mahogany is the species that would grow very, very well in Belize. The harvest cycle there is 35 years. We didn't do anything there in forestry, but you can buy. So, for example, our company, our development company, ECI Development, is building a Marriott hotel right now, resort in Belize, and the residences are started at $320,000. So if you decide you want to own one of these residences, you automatically qualify for their residency, the Belize residency program. But the minimum investment, you wouldn't have to buy one of our products. You could buy anything at $250,000 or higher, and you would qualify for a residency in Belize. But again, a big jump up from 32,000 to 250,000 or 320,000 for the Marriott. Yeah.
Okay. Beth is asking, what are the expat communities like in Nicaragua and Panama? And you also have resident communities people could move into still?
We do, yeah. But we have
Grand Pacific.
Grand Pacific is a wonderful community at the beach, about an hour west of Managua. We have about, I don't know, I think completed, I call them addresses because we have homes, condos, and tiny homes, right? So we have a mix of all three. We have about 170 completed. We have another 45, 50 under construction that'll finish up by the end of the year. So we'll have a little over 200 addresses at Grand Pacifica by the end of this year. And maybe about 100 full-time residents. So it's like a little village.
Cool.
But there are other parts of Nicaragua. You've got San Juan del Sur, you've got Granada, which is an old colonial city with a big expat community. Panama, a lot of the expats are either in Panama City or the beach areas, Coronado, Chamay, or in Boquete, which is a very different climate. So lots of great communities there, expat communities in
and they're all connected. They're hanging out.
They hang out, and they're and different communities can have a different flavor,
Sure.
right? This freedom-oriented community, I think you would find in very specific places. I think other areas tend to be maybe more liberal. I don't know what to call it, but less libertarian, more liberal, more woke. So again, the thing that we always
hippie kind of
hippie, but lefty hippie, not because there's a whole group of kind of hippies that are very
anti-vax.
Yeah, anti-vax, and so it's kind of it's a weird demographic these days, right? It's all kind of mixing and mingling. But the thing, if you're looking for a place to call home, you need to rent. And I'm a big fan of, our business is to build and sell real estate, right? People can't believe I say this, but rent for 3 to 6 months before you buy anywhere. If you're buying a home, if you're buying something that you want to use and enjoy and find community, because in 3 to 6 months, you will know if you like your neighbors or not. You will know if this is a place that you want to call home. And so renting is critically important and something you should do. By the way, I have a new book. Can I get my play?
Yeah, sure. Do I have it over here?
Yeah, it's right there. Anyway, I just saw it out of the corner of my eye. The thing about my book. Okay, go to Amazon. $3, $2.99 until July 22nd. It launches. This is all pre-sales. $2.99. You will be so happy you own this book if you're going to look at owning a property overseas.
It's very thorough.
Extremely thorough. Everything from culture shock. I talk about renting for 3 to 6 months before you buy, how you do due diligence and all that kind of stuff. But truly, if you're buying a home overseas, not an investment, an investment's a head decision. We can do that far away. We can do it analytically. Home is a heart decision. And I just implore you, before you would buy a home overseas, rent for 3 to 6 months. And it's in the book. And by the way, on Amazon, you look up Michael K. Cobb. Michael K. Cobb. This book will come up $3, and it'll drop to your Kindle or audio device at the middle of the month, a couple more weeks.
Lots of practical stuff in here too. Like,
Yeah.
I know medical care is really important.
Yep.
You even talk about traffic laws and,
Carrying, which countries allow you to carry and have a gun permit.
oh, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's in there. It's one, right.
I
Yeah,
know Mexico doesn't allow that at
does
all.
not, but Nicaragua does.
Oh,
Yeah, see, there's a
that's
great example.
important.
Belize does not, right? So
That
again,
is a big check against like really hardcore authoritarianism.
right, exactly. So anyway, so it's kind of interesting. And we cover a lot of those topics in the book to make sure that it's, again, a useful tool for you. And for $3, goodness gracious, get a copy.
Are there retired communities that are part of the expat? Lots of retired folks.
Lots of retired folks. Absolutely.
A lot of people from Canada, you said.
Yeah, a lot of Canadian. Well, it's cold up there, I think.
Sure.
I think it's cold. Yeah.
Okay, here's a great question. Does each family member need to apply for residency?
Great question. Whoever, thank you. Great
Anonymous attendee.
Okay, thanks, Anonymous. No, great question. So one investment will cover a husband and a wife and minor children. Now, there's a separate legal fee for the spouse and for the kids, right? But that one investment qualifies a family for the residency with the additional legal fees, government fees on top. So yes, and the property consultants have all the details, but that is a phenomenal question. Thank you. A great question.
One investment, one blood family.
Yeah, one blood family with minor children.
Minor children, not your brother or your uncle.
No, not your 30-year-old kid.
Parents and children.
Parents,
minor children.
Minor children.
What is that, 18 or under? 17 or under?
I think it's 18.
Something like that. But the consultants will be able to answer that. Great question there. Do you need, okay, here's a question about the actual offer that we made. Do you need to have the whole investment by the end of the month, or does your program allow for payments to be made over a specified time period?
We'll work with you. We'll work with you.
Okay.
It's a reasonable ask, right? Yeah.
But reasonable payments, of course.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, it's not a
no
not
$50 a month.
It's not $1 a year for 7,000 years, right? Yeah.
Okay, great question. Yeah, and again, we're really just trying to encourage people to take action, because
yes,
that's why you know that at Live Free Academy we do all sorts of marketing stuff, and it's always like a deadline, and the offer goes away at this date, and get this bonus if you purchase, because we know there's all sorts of stuff going on, and this really is a great opportunity. So we're trying to encourage people to at least get in touch with Mike's team. Now, sending that email, info@ecidevelopment.com, you're not obligated to anything. You're just starting that conversation. And then if you do want to move forward and you get everything taken care of before the end of July 2024, people are going to be watching the replay before the end of July. If it comes into August, no worries. We're just trying to get you guys to take action, because this really is a great opportunity. Rebecca and I are invested. We're going to look into I don't know, it's all about attention really on the second residency thing, but
it is.
It's definitely something that I see the value in myself. And we'll first go visit you down there in Nicaragua and take you.
By the way, you keep threatening to come down, but
you're going to show us a good time there.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. This is a great question too. This is one I saw earlier and I was like, I love my audience and their question. How does what is going on in the Darien Gap, is that, he said Darien. It's Darien. Okay. Darien Gap impact Panama, and in particular these plantation areas, and maybe set the stage first. Like what's the relevance?
So the Darien Gap is the jungle area between Colombia and Panama. Well, I mean, it's the border runs in the middle of the Darien Gap. Anyway, and it's the place where the Pan American Highway ends, right? The actual Pan American Highway ends just a little past Meta T, although now they're building a bridge, it'll get a little further. And if you want to drive from Alaska to the bottom of Argentina or Chile, you actually have to take your car and put it on a ferry boat in Panama, and it'll take you around to Colombia, where you pick up the road again and keep driving, right? So there is no road that goes the whole way through. It's this mountainous jungle area with rivers, and it's dangerous. A lot of people hiking it, of course. They're trying to get out of Venezuela and these other places to come to the U.S.
It's part of this migrant caravan.
It is.
It's a lot of activity.
Right. And so the bottom line is, the Panamanians, actually, I love it. They have buses waiting for these people. They get them into a camp. I mean, not all of them. Some of them go to the camp. Most go into a camp because they're just hating life after shrekking through the jungle. I mean, like, people are dying. I mean, it's bad. I mean, it's really bad, right? So they get to this camp. They're there for a few days. Panama has a bus system, and they're taking them from the Darien Gap to the border of Costa Rica, Costa Rica puts them on buses, takes them to Nicaragua. Nicaragua takes them to Guatemala, Salvador, Guatemala. I mean, like, right. None of these countries want these folks. I mean, and so they're just moving them through. I was down there a couple of weeks ago. We're working on our sawmill. I was just talking about the sawmill. So we're working on our sawmill, looking at properties, and we passed along the road several groups of people, but we also passed a gas station where, I don't know, 4 or 5 buses had pulled over, and they were full of the folks being bussed from, the Darien up to the border of Costa Rica. So there really has not been any impact, and I don't expect there to be an impact on our business. So,
Okay.
yeah.
I'm just thinking about all that. Like, there's so much sensationalism with all that stuff. We don't have to get into it, but it really is a humanitarian crisis. What's taking place, and a lot of it genuinely is fleeing like hardcore economic collapse and authoritarianism, and it's a thing, and it's going to continue to be a thing.
It is.
Let's remember when we send that email to also send an email for folks to get the book.
Oh, yes.
So
Thank you.
Mike's team will follow up with an email.
Yep.
Later on, they'll get the replay for this if anybody wants to tap back in, or if you just tapped in halfway through. And it'll also include information about how to continue the conversation with a consultant.
By the way, Diego, if you're still there, please make a note of that. Let's make sure that we do send something about the book link when we send out the replay as well, please. Yeah.
And the $500 off offer.
And the $500 offer
for each parcel.
That is correct.
Okay, can you speak to the leader of Nicaragua? How does Nicaragua's dictator treat the expats and their properties? Is he formerly like a dictator?
Yeah. Dictator? I mean, he was in the late 70s and 80s, right under the Sandinistas. I mean, you can call him whatever you want. You can call him a dictator. He was elected by the people. He continues to be elected by the people. Fair election is not, I don't know, right? It's not my country.
It's not a fair election in this country either.
It's not my country. I don't have an opinion on politics. But to answer the question, how do they treat expats? Very, very well. Again, every North American in that country contributes to the economy 5, 8, 10, 15, 20 times more per year than the average local does. And so expats are a tremendous economic benefit to the country. And as long as, and I use this analogy, if I was staying at your house and you and Rebecca, I'm a guest in your house, right? It's your house. It's you and Rebecca's house, not my house, right? You invite me over. Hey, Mike, come stay in our home. Great. And if I'm out in the kitchen, we're having dinner, and the two of you get in a fight, you know what? I'm going back to my room and I'm turning the TV up loud, and I'm just going to watch TV for a while because it's not my house. It's not my fight. Right. And I don't care what country it is. Right. If there are political issues in the country that you're in as a guest in that country, right? Even if you're a resident, you're not a citizen. You can't vote. Right. Just go back to your room, turn up your TV, and forget about it, because it's not your fight. And I truly counsel, in fact, in my book, I counsel people, treat your residency in that country as if you were in somebody else's home. And if they're having a fight, that's their fight. That's not your fight. Stay out of it. And I think that works very, very well. And it's respectful. It's respectful. I'm a guest in your country. I'm a guest in your home. Not my fight. I'm going back to my room. Staying out.
The other option is to become active. Again, you can't. Can you vote? You can't vote.
No, you're a resident.
You can't become politically active. But I don't know. I don't know if this is the idea. Isn't to go become an activist in these countries to try to shape their government, because not only is that an extreme undertaking. I mean, it can be done. I don't know if anybody's got it in them, but you could find yourself in a world of trouble too if you start involving yourself and standing up for this injustice and stuff.
Right.
So, I mean, I guess if one of these countries does become hardcore, open air authoritarianism, people getting killed on the street, then maybe there's a residency in another country, right?
Right. Yeah.
I mean,
is it no guarantees? I mean, look, the whole point is there's no guarantees. We're just especially for a second residency, what we're really looking for is a plan B. Like, if shit hits the fan here and we go somewhere and shit hits the fan there, well, you know what? We might be looking for a plan C at that point, right?
It's that flexibility.
Right. It's options. It's flexibility and options. Right. And maybe whatever was happening, you know, in our home country has kind of ended and we can go back to the home country again. We're just giving ourselves landing pads. We're giving ourselves, yeah, that flexibility to be somewhere else legally. Critically important, legally. Yeah.
Is Panama's more democratically elected, more genuine democracy? What's that?
I don't know. They have elections and they
He
just
doesn't want to comment on
Hang on,
it.
you know what? Because I'm not Panamanian
Sure.
and I'm not Nicaraguan.
Mhm.
I have no opinion on their politics. None. Zero. None. It's not my country. You can do your own analysis. You can decide whether you like it, you don't like it, you want to be there, you don't want to be there, right? I am very agnostic on politics because I don't think, in my experience, almost 32 years, you know, this September will be 32 years of working and living in the region, you know, foreign investing. I mean, as a full-time gig, it's not just my part. I mean, like for 32 years, full-time in the region, right? I have yet, I don't know, future, I mean, whatever. I have yet to see local politics have any meaningful impact on expats in any of these countries, But people can draw their own conclusions. You know, yeah.
You know, one thing too, like you've been speaking about the government treating expats well. The locals treat expats really well
Yeah,
too, and
sure.
they recognize the economic benefit, and they'll wait on
Absolutely.
you hand over foot. And you know, you leave tips and propinas, and they will be very grateful and appreciative. The service is like way better than any American or Western
Yeah.
countries you'll experience.
Correct.
Okay, a weird question. As a full-time RVer, I do not pay a typical utility bill. Would a
Okay.
T-Mobile phone Wi-Fi bill be acceptable for the documents and stuff?
Oh, thank you. I was trying to, yes, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely it would. Because what they're really trying to figure out is that what they really want to know is that you're a real person. Like you're not some made up person. So what they're really looking for on a utility bill is a physical address. That's what they want to see, a physical address where you receive a utility bill. If you're an RVer, presumably you've got a mailing address somewhere. I don't think they like PO boxes, by the way. So like you might have to, you know, reroute some of those utility bills to a friend or a relative or whatever you want to do. So yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
there's some mailboxes you could find too that appear as
They have a street
a
address.
physical brick and mortar. Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Can you invest in a parcel? Oh, that's a great question. And this is for second residency. Can
Okay.
you invest in a parcel a year for 5 consecutive years and then get residency, or does it need to all be at once?
To qualify, it needs to be all at once. And I'm 95% sure on this answer. I'm not 100% sure. Ask you can send that question in. I think they're going to want to see use Nicaragua. They're going to want to see all $30,000 come into that bank account as one transaction to qualify for the residency. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Great question. Another question: can we invest around $1,000 of personal funds and around 7,000 from personal funds and around 7,000 from a self-directed IRA to meet the minimum 10K for residency? Is it 10K for residency?
It's no, it's 20 in Panama. It's 20 in Nicaragua. It's 30.
But same question.
Same question. No, if you use any IRA funds at all, you are prohibited from benefiting personally from those funds. The IRA rules are very, very strict on that. Like if a lot of people say, "Oh, I'm going to buy a condo in my IRA, and you know, can I use it? Can I go there a week a year?" Nope, you can't even you walk in it, but you can't use it. Like you can't cook on the stove.
Yep.
Like nothing. So no, the answer is no on that. Yeah.
But you can use an IRA to invest in Teak outside of benefiting from it.
Absolutely. You just the residency piece would come off the table, right? We have a lot of folks that have owned their Teak inside an IRA,
and your
right?
team can help sort through all that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Connect with the TPA and stuff.
Yep.
Okay, excellent. How would you describe the culture of Nicaraguan people? How do they welcome or are adverse to foreigners living there? We spoke about this. Do they speak English or Spanish a must? Do you still live there? Are there expat communities there? What are some of the hurdles for getting settled there? I've never been to Central America. I definitely recommend the book because I was just thumbing through it earlier today and reading a bit, and it addresses a lot of that stuff. But
It
if you
really
could hit
does.
this one real quick.
Yeah, and you know what? I'll address it in a minute or two, but right, the book's a couple hundred pages of really delving into it. You know, I think the most important attribute we have when we go overseas, maybe two, humility, right? Humility, to just say, look, I'm in your country and I don't really know how things work here. So, approach things, carefully and slowly, but with humility. And then also with a sense of humor. It depends on where you are in the country. The more rural, the less English that's spoken. The more urban, the more English that's spoken. Professionals, doctors, lawyers, business people, English is the second language of the world or the first language of the world, whatever, right? So you're going to find that, like, if you need medical care, you're going to find, like, that's pretty urgent, that's pretty important. Like, you'll find English speakers, right? If you're out in the middle of nowhere and you're trying to find a pulperia, which is like a little convenience store, like, you can probably say Coca-Cola, we go, okay, yeah, over there, right? I mean, so, like, we find ways to communicate. So that's going to be there. But truly, the question about expats and how we decide whether it's a good place for us, there are a lot of factors. The most important factor, in fact, the most important factor starts on page 43. I know it because I know it because this is truly it. Let me say, know thyself. Know thyself. All right. For excellent property buying overseas. The key words are know thyself. And part of the process of finding a community, which is what we're really talking about, right? Talk about expats, but we don't care. We'll be around other people our age. Who cares? No, what we're really trying to find is a community. And in order to find a community that's right for us, we really have to do a soul searching. Well, who do I want to be around? Who, like, what's important to me, right? There's weather, there's geography, there's lots of things, right? And so pages 43 through 48 delve into that topic very specifically. And then, the rest of the book gets a lot more granular on those things. But knowing ourselves, right? Knowing what it is that's important to us and ranking them, because we can't have everything. Right? We can't have everything. And part of the surveys that we have a great survey in here.
Super
The
practical.
lifestyle assessment quiz, right? I guess I came up with that name, but anyway, that's a mouthful. But anyway, but the lifestyle assessment really is an assessment, and I'll tell you what, it asks questions like how close to a grocery store do I want to be, right? Do I want to be in a warm weather climate? Do I want it dry? Do I want it humid? Do I want to live at the beach? Do I live in the mountains? But see, those are pretty easy questions for most people. But here's one that most people don't ever think about. How close to an English-speaking church do I want to live? Right? Like, for some people who don't go to church, they don't care. But for some people who go to church once, twice, 3 times a week, right? Being close to an English-speaking church is really important. And those are the questions that I think so many of us kind of forget to ask. And this lifestyle assessment quiz kind of prompts us through a lot of questions like that. And we don't get all of them, right? We can't get all of the questions, but if we can start to get people thinking about, oh my goodness, I never would have thought of that. Then we go, well, what about this? What about that, right? What about a gym, right? Like, what about a boxing gym? I love to box. I haven't thought about boxing, right? Or whatever it is, right? So this book really, and the quiz, but the book itself helps us think differently. And that's a big part of success, because the subtitle here, right? It's, how to buy your home overseas. But I think the subtitle is far more important, and get it right the first time. Right? And get it right the first time. And that's what we're about as a company. That's what I'm about as a person. And the book encapsulates, that philosophy.
Excellent. So you can search that title on Amazon or search Michael K. Cobb.
Yep.
Michael K. Cobb. And again, we're going to be sending, Michael's team's going to send an email after the fact. Okay. Well, we went a full on 2 hours here. I got a hot date with the lovely wife.
All right.
We're going to the Sphere. Let's just blast through these right quick. Why wouldn't you buy or plant year to year or every other year or whatever?
We do as a company. We've been planting teak every year for, I don't know, 12 years, 10, 12 years at this point. Yeah. And we're going to continue. I mean, we bought the plantation. We thought, okay, well, we have it, whatever. But then, a lot of people had interest. So yeah, we have been, we will continue to every year plant more teak.
It's just that the cycle is 25 years.
Oh, yeah. The harvest cycle is 25 years, but we're going to continue to plant baby teak every year. And if we sell it all, great. If we don't sell it all, the company gets 100% of the revenue on that deal. So
Okay.
yeah, we're okay with that.
Pierre says, what about any future of doing this in El Salvador? Any future avenue in El Salvador?
I mean, maybe, we don't currently work in El Salvador, and we have a joint venture that's pending. It's going to be a Bitcoin-based community, which we're very excited about. And the property owner there is working through some final legal issues on his title. There's nothing wrong with this title, but he had to subdivide and segregate and stuff like that. So he's working through that. When he's done with that, we will be in El Salvador developing a Bitcoin community, which is very exciting.
Cool.
And once we're there on the ground with a team, yes, I could see us doing teak in El Salvador as well. Yeah.
Awesome. If shit hits the fan, can you live on the land? Your quarter acre.
Yes, it would be miserable, but but yes,
You can really.
Yeah, you can pitch a tent. I mean, like you're gonna be out in the middle of a teak forest. I don't know. It would be miserable. I wouldn't want to do it, but it's certainly many steps above dying. So yeah.
Okay. And I want to share this too. This is something Mike, I asked Mike on the last one. We were all into CBDCs. I had just done the CBDC action plan, or it was about to happen. And like, let's fast forward 25 years and CBDCs are implemented everywhere. Mike's a Bitcoin guy. So if it's possible to have the payout in Bitcoin, you would be open to doing something like that.
Right. Look, we will be dependent upon our buyers. We're going to produce lumber, right? And if we can find a buyer of the lumber that wants to pay in Bitcoin, yeah, be sure we will take it, right? So a lot of it depends upon the marketplace, what we can transact the lumber, one commodity for another commodity. But sure, yeah, absolutely. And by the way, on the front end going in, we take metals, we take Bitcoin. So if you say, hey, look, I've got some gold, and more than several, whatever. Many people have invested with metals and with Bitcoin. So it's a pretty straightforward process for either of those. So if you have those commodities, we're happy to trade the hardwood commodity for those commodities, right?
And the cool thing too is like you're dealing with somebody that gets the world and is a freedom guy. So he's open to navigating around whatever may come in the future as far as crazy, oppressive, weird techno-fascism stuff. Okay. Tony says, why did Nicaragua sell their gold mines to China? I don't know. Do you know anything about that?
I didn't know that they did. Probably because China offered them a really good price.
Okay. Okay. So if all of this is under my humanitarian foundation, name, phone, electric, is that a problem? So I guess, can they purchase the teak parcel in their humanitarian foundation? And then all the different requirements, can it be of nonprofit or foundation that buys it?
Yeah, any entity can buy it and own it. I think you'd run into problems if residency was trying to be a piece of that. It might get complicated.
Okay.
But yeah, and an entity can own the teak. Absolutely.
And reach out, talk to the consultants about the specifics of that. Will the book be offered soon in hard copy?
Yes, July 22nd.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, Karen was saying, thanks for your input and answering questions. Not enough time to go through it all, I guess. So, all right, well, yeah, thank you so much, everybody. We went through 34 questions there. That's pretty impressive.
This was great, John. Thank you.
Good
stuff.
Really,
man.
Well, thank you.
Absolutely.
It's great to hang out in person always.
Take your bride out for a wonderful dinner.
We're going to go see Dead and Company. I'm a big Grateful Dead fan.
So. See it, and the Sphere is a great place to see it.
Okay, just if you want to run down again, where do they email? What's the $500 special? And just any closing words?
Easy. info@ecidevelopment.com. Just put teak residency. There was something else we were going to, I can't remember what the third thing was to put up there. Anyway, if you send an email and you have any questions, our folks will get right back to you. They can get on the phone with you. They'll send over the paperwork to look at it. $500 off any teak parcel. So multiple parcels, $500 off each. Get the email to us today, please. And then we'll get the paperwork over. Again, you've got a couple weeks to review paperwork, work through the process. If owning teak is something you want to do, we'd love to have you on board. If you're looking at this as a plan B, as a residency plan B, really wise, prudent, Very excited for you. We will work with you to get through that process. It's a little more of a process, but for folks looking for that freedom insurance, there's truly no asset that's more important to protect than us. And that residency will give you that level of protection and freedom and peace of mind. And I have found it to be incredibly worthwhile for me and my family. And I hope other folks will do the same.
Right on. Okay, great. Yeah, and Rebecca and I, we have a parcel. We're landowners
Yep.
overseas, so that's always exciting.
Yeah.
And like I said, I've come to know Mike pretty well over the past few years. We've hung out in person quite a bit. We're in constant contact with him and his team, and we're very involved with their company. And I trust the guy, and wouldn't be putting him in front of you guys if it wasn't for that. So it is really important for us to have that diversity. Who knows if things are going to go crazy, or maybe it's just slowly, it's just getting crappier, but it takes a good 50 or 100 years. Who knows what happens in the future? The point is, we don't know. And I do think it's, as you're saying, not to have all your eggs in one basket. It's really
Correct.
important. But then on the flip side, there is a pretty good upside potential to
Yes.
take advantage of, and all sorts of other benefits as well. So thanks again, Mr. Mike. Always
You're
a
welcome.
pleasure.